distinguished guests, well-wishers and friends, teachers, a pleasant good morning to you all.
Good morning.
As I sat and I listened to the presentations from the students at the Woodlawn Special School, I realized that there is a reason and there is a purpose for my fight to make life better for persons with disabilities.
Yes.
Because you would have seen how responsive they have been to the music. And it shows right there and then that with the requisite support, every child can learn and every child must learn. I am also heartened by a portion of the cultural item and its appropriateness, because it is happening to me right now. Because me not drink coffee tea mango time. No matter how nice it may be.
Yes.
A mango time now, you know. And anywhere the Julie mango there, you know, I have to find it. Yeah? I am heaven bound, and there is a Julie mango tree specially prepared up there for me. So I must make it to heaven. I am very happy to be here today. Earlier this year, when I was contacted by your institution through Joan Clark, I immediately accepted to speak, and I committed to working with the center to make sure that we develop the necessary mechanisms that will redound to improvement in the education of children with disabilities across this country. Because I tell you, Dr. Singh, that for every human being, there is a method and a means by which these individuals can learn. And as I contemplated what I am going to say today, I reflected on the theme coming down from Kingston, navigating the transitional pathway, services and support for students with special needs. And the theme is fittingly appropriate and appropriately fitting for times like these, where we are looking at how we can make the education system more inclusive for persons with disabilities. Indeed, overall trajectory is for one of inclusion, where students with disabilities are to be taught in the same educational space as those without disabilities. It's only in exceptional cases where there are complex disabilities that provision should be made for those children to be taught outside of the mainstream education system. And Jamaica has been a signatory to numerous international conventions, including the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, that expressly indicate that inclusive education must be the pathway for persons with disabilities. And it makes a lot of sense, because if it is that you are going to break down the years of negative attitude towards persons with disabilities, what better institution to aid in that transformation? What better institution than schools? Because what it is saying is that you should put a child who is blind, a child who is deaf, a child who has a physical disability in the same space as a person without any of these conditions. And what it will do is to show that individual and get them acculturated to say, hey, John is blind, but he's able to function. Jane is deaf, but she can operate. All it requires is for the necessary services and support systems to be put in place,
Yes.
that will allow for their functionality. And I say that I will be relentless in my pursuit, whether it be in government or opposition, to ensure that our education system becomes inclusive of persons with disabilities. You have to understand that the Disabilities Act was passed in the Parliament in 2014. I was very much instrumental in its formation and passage. And it was brought into force in 2022. And the legislation, among other things, frowns upon discrimination against persons with disabilities. And it defines discrimination as any exclusion or isolation of persons with impairments from participating in social, economic, cultural, religious institutions on an equal basis with others. And in that definition, it includes the denial of reasonable accommodation as a form of discrimination. Reasonable accommodation constitutes those mechanisms that are put in place to facilitate the inclusion of persons with disabilities in various spheres of life so that they can participate on an equal basis with others. So it is anticipated under reasonable accommodation that support services such as sign language interpretation, Braille for blind individuals, extension of time for persons with disabilities to complete their exams, adjustment of curricula to facilitate the learning needs of students with disabilities are all forms of reasonable accommodation. And I might say here that when I mention of adjustments in curricula, it does not mean that you should provide a different or easier curriculum for persons with disabilities to learn. No, not at all. It is just to anticipate that in teaching a person who is blind, there is a recognition that blind individuals are auditory creatures. They learn by what they hear. And so the support mechanisms must be put in place to accommodate those individuals in your curriculum. Likewise, it is anticipated that those individuals who are deaf are visual creatures, and as a consequence, they learn by what they see. And so, sign language is important, but equally, the placing of stuff in a visual form is important for these individuals. So it's not to change the curriculum and make it different for individuals with disabilities, but rather to make adjustments for their learning needs. And I want to further indicate that the Disabilities Act of Jamaica mandates every learning institution, whether it be at the pre-primary, primary, secondary, post-secondary, or tertiary institution, that provisions must be made for the education of persons with disabilities. And in this regard, there are certain services and support systems that must be put in place. It includes the provision of trained teachers in the classroom that understand the learning needs of persons with disabilities. It includes the provision of non-technical staff that will assist in the classroom with those children with disabilities. It includes the provision of modern assistive technologies that will allow for the easy interaction and interface of persons with disabilities in the classroom. It involves the modification of buildings to make them accessible for children with physical disabilities. And when I talk about modification of buildings, I'm not talking about putting in a ramp that will allow for the movement of Nutribun to the talk shop. I'm talking about making bathrooms accessible for children with disabilities. I'm talking about making modifications so that these children can go in and out of the classroom with minimal assistance. And as I say so, some individuals might say, Lord, it's a whole heap of work we have to do. And I say, yes, it's a lot of work that has to be done. But we must understand that persons with disabilities are Jamaicans too. And they have a right to education as entrenched in our Constitution and as we have signed off in various international treaties. And if it is that the Ministry of Education's mantra is that every child can learn and every child must learn, we must live true to the mantra and don't just make it be a slogan. Yes. Because sloganeering cannot empower our people in 21st century Jamaica. I want to say, that's my friend Michael Stewart here, you know. Big him up and bless him up. I want to say, I feel passionate about education. And let me tell you why I am passionate about education. Because it is education that has made me into who I am. And when people were saying that you can't, I say I will. Yeah. And I had to fight the system at every level to make sure that I be the best that I can. So, hear me now. I went to St. Mary High School, passed common entrance in 1981. I had my perfect sight. I wasn't born blind. I left and I went to high school, and whilst there, at grade 9, I developed glaucoma. And I realized immediately the challenges that I was having with my education, because my grades started to plummet. And the teachers in the classroom at the time never knew or understand what to do with a child who has a disabling condition. I went through school struggling and graduated without a single academic subject in 1986. I left St. Mary High School a frustrated student, just waiting for the dreaded moment of total blindness to come. That moment came in 1989, which was the year that I last saw what the world looked like. I was now blind, have a disability, and come from a poor family. A recipe for eternal condemnation. But I was strengthened with the resolve that come what may, I was not going to make my circumstances alter my future. And I know that with my belief in God, I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so, when I said to my mother, I am going back to school, because if there was one thing that she instilled in me, was that I must take education seriously. And that foundational principle in recognizing the value and importance of education was deeply embedded in my life. And so, even though she had a concern about her wash belly, now blind, leaving her home to go on his own to get educated in Kingston. Big concerns for mothers. The concerns of fathers are totally different from that of mothers, you know. Because it's the mother's belly pain. So I left and I went to Kingston. Got reorientated at the Jamaica Society for the Blind, learned to read and write Braille, and did refresher course in typewriting and computing, and re-registered at the Michael Evening College, because now I was equipped with the necessary support tools that I could get back into the classroom and restart my education. I went to Michael. In the first year I did 4 O-level subjects. I wanted to do 5 and they would not allow for it. But we settled for a compromise and I did 4 subjects, including maths and accounts. 2 of the most difficult subjects for a blind person to do. But if you have the requisite support systems in place, you can overcome those challenges. And that I did. I passed all 4 subjects, including a distinction in accounts. The next year, I re-registered for 3 additional subjects, including A-level accounts and economics. 2 difficult subjects again for a blind person, because you have to do and deal with numbers. You have to look at ledgers and journals for accounts. You have to deal with graphs and so forth for economics. Difficult subjects. But again, I passed all 3 subjects that I sat and was now qualified for the university. I went to the University of the West Indies and I did extremely well there. And that's because at the University of the West Indies, there are support systems and services in place for students with disabilities at the institution. There's a committee that has been formed to make sure that students with disabilities get the requisite support in their education at that institution. I went through, graduated with an honors degree in media and communication, and then moved on to do the Master of Philosophy in Government, where I graduated in 2001. I took a break from academia because of politics, and then re-engaged in academia in 2012 to complete the circle with my PhD. And that I did in 2017, 31 years after I graduated from high school without a single academic subject. I completed a PhD at the University of the West Indies. And I said, Dr. Smith, that I was not going to end there, because you have a lot of persons with disabilities who have gone on to do their PhD, but because of the intensity of the work and the nature of the readings that you have to do in preparing yourself for a PhD, a lot of persons with disabilities don't move on from the PhD to the next level. But I said I was going to challenge the system, and I persisted and did research, whole heaps of work, whole heaps of research, whole lot of writing. And I ended up being promoted to the rank of professor at the University of the West Indies in 2024. That was some 38 years after I graduated from high school without a single academic subject. And it was the first in the 75-year history of the University of the West Indies that a person with a disability was being elevated to the rank of professor. Why have I taken the opportunity to share this journey with you? We are talking about navigating the transitional pathway, services and support for persons with special needs. I established the God factor in my life. That's a given. Nothing that I have done came about because of my own doing, but because I have a firm belief in my God.
Amen.
But I will also tell you that it required support systems and services for me to reach where I am today. Volunteers who But it was my eyes that are blind, not my brain. It took technological support to assist me in navigating over 10,000 pieces of literature to become a professor. That's why when people pass them place, with us as these persons with disability, I don't want to put them in a them place because I don't beg my professorship. I work for that. And the work, Dr. Singh, is probably 3 times that of a sighted person. Because 95% of academic literature, 95% of academic literature are published in formats that are not accessible to persons with disabilities. So I have had to find creative ways of converting those literature into accessible format in order to do my research and writing and make the necessary publications that are peer-reviewed. And the peer reviews were not done by friends of mine. There are people where I don't know from all over the world that I don't know, because that is the process that is required for you to become a professor at an academic institution like the University of the West Indies. And I did it as a blind person.
Yes.
And once the support systems are in place, a person with disability can achieve anything that they want in this life. The technology is of such that today it is so empowering and enabling. And I say that I could not come and make a presentation here without making a demonstration of how the technology has assisted me in my work. So, I have with me my iPhone. And the iPhone is built with what we call universal design. In that a blind person or any other person with a disability can use the same technology that a sighted person or a non-disabled person can use to function on a daily basis. And I have an app on my phone called Be My Eyes, which allows me to take pictures and it interprets them for me. And I'm going to do a demonstration for you just now. So bear with me in one moment as I do the demonstration. All right, so let me be a paparazzi today. And so it's interpreting the picture.
The lecture hall and tab bar, settings, tab, 5 of 5.
Okay.
Community, tab, service directory, selected, Be My AI, tab, 2 Get support. Ask more. Button. Take picture. Button. A lecture hall with rows of red cushion seats. Mostly occupied by people. The audience is diverse, with men and women of various ages. Some are smiling and looking towards the camera. A woman in a red jacket is sitting in the front row. There is a laptop on a podium in the bottom of the image, displaying a document with text. The hall has red curtains and a few lights on the ceiling. Directions available.
Okay, so you see, it tells me everything that is in the room. And I am certain that my sighted counterparts here would not have given me such a graphic description of what is taking place in the room. But this is where the technology is today to accommodate persons with disabilities. But the technology, while it's available, is extremely expensive because not a lot of persons with disabilities are able to purchase an iPhone, because the data is suggesting that over 90% of these individuals in Jamaica are unemployed. And so, ways and means must be found to ensure that these individuals have access to these technologies. And this is why I was very encouraged coming out of the recent budget presentation, where the leader of the opposition pointed out that there will be the establishment of a national disability fund that will, amongst other things, provide services for persons with disabilities to access modern technologies that will allow for persons with disabilities to gain greater educational support, for non-governmental organizations catering to persons with disabilities to gain greater financial support. I have been encouraged by those articulations, because if it is that we are going to include persons with disabilities in the mainstream of society, we have to increase the necessary support services for these individuals. Persons with disabilities can learn, and persons with disabilities must learn. I want to see a Jamaica where an audience such as this will not be impressed just by the accomplishment of one Floyd Morris, but that it becomes a norm where persons with disabilities from any corner of Jamaica can know that they can navigate the education system and become anyone, anything that he or she wants to be.
Yes.
We're talking about equality of opportunity and the provision of social justice for our people through education. And I say to this august body, I commend Church Teachers College for organizing this seminar. It is a critical step in building awareness and accelerating the transformation that is needed for persons with disabilities to navigate the traditional pathway and be meaningfully included in society. It can happen.
Yes.
I have done it. And so others with disabilities can. God bless you.